Alright guys, so this was the third game. Again, I don't know why I'm having some technical issues. Was recording this and it didn't work out, so you will get the replays of this matchup. But anyways, this is going to be a matchup against Fissure Storm, which is really a troublesome thing out there. This is the Simic variant, and it's very, very strong. I want to add a little disclaimer warning here that this will probably be a long video because, you know, if you have ever played against this, it usually comes down to time and a lot of efforts when they get going. So this was opening hand in the first game, and I was really pondering what to do with this. I had two lands in hand. I debated on whether or not it was safe to go with this hand. If I went with this hand, I could start out with a turn 1 Baron Moor to ensure that on turn 2 we could get off Sign in Blood. The only thing that was holding me up there is this Tendrils of Corruption, and by doing that, when I do finally reach that 4 mana spot, if I am playing against aggro, I'm going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage because I finally have 4 mana to cast Tendrils, but at most it's only going to give me 3 life gain. So I decided that, okay, I am on the draw here, my opponent is playing first, so I'm going to chance it, and I'm going to drop down to 6 in an attempt to hopefully find enough lands, and then I'll be okay because, I'm only going to be 1 card behind, and I usually be kind of 1 ahead. So I decided to drop to 6. Let's get this to catch up here. It's going to be a little slow. These are replays that did not save either, so I'm kind of playing these by ear out of the completed section. The matches that go away as soon as they are not watched. So dropping to 6, this is the cards I had at 6, and I only had 1 land in hand, and that is definitely not going to work. 2 is something you could hopefully stick with and skate by, especially with a Sign in Blood in hand, but I had only 1, got to drop to 5. Only 1 land again, and this is a Baron Moor, which is even worse. So I decided I am on the draw. I'm going to go to 4, but I would not go any lower. Thankfully, I guess, on 4, I ended up with 3 lands. 1 is a Baron Moor, so I can start off with that turn 1 and get that going. Right away, as soon as you see Slippery Karst come down, that this is going to be the SimicFissure Storm. Simic runs the Slippery Karst because that cycling cost of 2 colorless is easier and more friendly to 8 post than the other version, which is a green to cast. So draw into yet another land, not good, but once again I am going to simply be able to cycle that off. Draw into Crypt Rats, which is not a very strong card in this matchup. It can be used as a finisher, definitely something that you don't want to completely drop from your deck in sideboarding, because you can get to a point where you are low on your opponent and you just need a little bit more to finish them off, and you could respond with something like a Storm, with a Crypt Rats activation. So not terrible, not great. He's going to use Crop Rotation and finally get his Cloud Posts going. Game 1, this deck matchup is fair to poor, I would say. You do have some great options thanks to the discard and the heavy aggressiveness that you can get off of a big activation of Crypt Rats. But what you're really going to benefit from is sideboarding and bringing in those 8 land destruction spells, definitely, and moving out some of that creature kill because they run a very low base. So Distress coming in. Looking at his hand here, he has options here to obviously play Preordain early thanks to all these color changers. I decided that I still wanted to take that out because of the fact that if you look at these options, the Chromatic Sphere and Chromatic Star allow him to simply draw a single card. Same with Prism. He has no control over what that card is. With Preordain and the Scry ability on that, it gives him a choice of what he wants that to be. So I did decide that Preordain is what I wanted to get rid of. So Prism is going to come down. He's going to have options here to put down any of his little 1 guys. Obviously not going to, because those are kind of an important part of building up his storm count, and does get a forest in off that draw apparently. You have to keep in mind, okay, I knew it was in his hand. It was 2 Chromatic Spheres, a Star, and a Prism. So if he plays the Prism and nothing else, he's got, he plays the forest. That means that's probably what he drew into. At some point there, he did draw, obviously a card on the turn and a card on the Prism, but you knew at least one of those is a forest. So finally at 3, I'm going to start off, obviously, with the Rager. Excuse me, joking. You don't have to be so protective of your life in this game, because they're basically going to look to finish you off with Karavek's Torch. They use the Temporal Fissure combo not as a finisher, but as a control for the tempo of the game, and they can keep you completely locked down with that plus Mnemonic Wall and Ghostly Flicker. and they can keep you locked down with that while they build up their mana base so that they can deal damage to you in a single turn off of Torch, ideally. Sometimes it will take them 2 if you're at 20 life. But anyways, we are going to draw cards here because, again, we don't really care so much about saving life. So, Star playing some stuff. It looked like he, when you play that many artifacts, it's really a build-up to getting the storm count up. And I think he was at about 3 or 4 there. Either way, he didn't have the mana he needed just yet to actually get a Fissure Storm off. So, trying to Baron more, going to cycle this in hopes of finding another 3-cost creature that we want to put down. We can put down the rats. You see, I will do it here because we need as much aggro as possible. We need to get as much damage through as possible before he builds up all of his Glimmer Posts. But we, of course, are going to cycle before playing the rats, just on the off chance that we find another Rager, or even better, a Spectre. So, opponent's turn. Tapping out, does use Ghostly Flicker to bounce his prisms and draw 2 cards. It's a good option for him. Having those in the graveyard is not a huge deal. This matchup does definitely once again tell me that, God, I really wish I had just a Bog or 2 in the main deck so that I could deal with these graveyards, because Ghostly Flicker is something that they don't run a lot of copies of, but what they do run is a very important important part of that deck and that combination. So, my turn, draw Geth's Verdict again, kind of a dead card. I can use it to get rid of a wall if it does come down. That is something that a majority of Simic decks, and this is important to note, a majority of the Simic decks are only running a single copy of Mnemonic Wall. So if you can use, Spinning Darkness or Snuff Out, it's a great opportunity to kill off that single wall, and they have no option to really protect it. They don't run counter spells. Their big option for protecting it is going to be Ghostly Flicker in response to your kill spell. So having Geth's Verdict in there is a great opportunity to actually get that down. They usually run a very low creature base, maybe 4 Mulldrifters in a single wall, or less than that. So it's definitely something you want to keep aware of. And I think my opponent was only running a single wall, maybe 2 walls in this deck. I don't know. I only saw a single wall at any point in time as the creature base. So, drawn to Distress, I am going to make the play here. Obviously, it's the only thing I have going for me. Looking at his hand, you see Temporal Fissure is a good target, and the other good target here is Karavek's Torch. Either one of these, I think, could be important to get rid of. Karavek's Torch is the finisher. He doesn't have enough mana for it to be a threat right now. Getting rid of it, the pros is obviously you get rid of that, and then he needs to find the wall to get it back, and he's basically taken an entire turn usually to get the wall to return it, and then he's not going to be able to kill you until the following turn. The other option here is the Temporal Fissure, which obviously causes the lockout, and I am a little more afraid of the Fissure lockout. I do have a little bit of life gain options off the Spinning Darkness on a wall at some point in time, or I can use Tendrils on myself in game 1. So life gain, I think, will do enough to basically keep me in this. Say he is at the point where he uses a torch and I just have enough life to get past it, something like that, and he uses it up then. So I really wanted to get rid of the Fissure lock. I think that was a bigger threat at this point in the game. Drawing more cards here on Prism, playing more lands, and so on and so on. Expedition Map. This is kind of how the Simic post deck works. They are going to sit back, they are going to play a bunch of lands, and they're going to kind of just work their way through. So, building up his mana base, and this is why, I said game 1, not a really great spot. We're going to do 3 damage here. Crypt Rats, first off, is, one of our weakest creatures. It's got the smallest power of any of our creatures. But he's building up his land. We have no land destruction, so he's going to feel free to build up his Cloud Posts to the 4+ mark, plus being, obviously, the Glimmer Posts. And we're going to basically be stuck sitting here on these creature kill spells that we can't really do anything with. And in game 1, he's going to easily be able to sit back, and he's got that torch in hand already. We already know about this. So we're going to be able to just have to sit back and kind of wait and hope that he doesn't get that going just yet. My only hope was at this point in time, I know he has Torch. He now has all of his Cloud Posts in play, and these are going to each tap for 6 mana. My only hope was that he would be kind of stupid about it and only, do enough to kill me off, like 20, and in response, I could get a wall hit with Spinning Darkness and go up some life. Gonna cycle there on Unearth. Really nothing going on. The one trick to this here is that I need a non-black creature in order to cast Spinning Darkness. So if he just torches, then I'm dead. If he plays a wall at some point in time here, then I at least have a target I can gain some life off. So he's going to tap out here. It looks like he is smarter than your average bear and is going to be able to do torch down. And he actually does it for more than the 20 that he needs. Let's just fast forward. It's going to lag behind. But he is going to cast torch here for 23, which is, well enough to get beyond any life gain I would have had there. So we're going to, do this in segments. We're going to take a look at the sideboarding and what I did there. And then we're going to get into the next matches. Alright guys, we're going to take a look real quick at what we did as far as sideboarding for Fissure Post. Now, I like to sum up the way to attack Fissure Post under 3 means. First is obviously going to be land destruction. Take down the Cloud Posts, they can't generate the big mana, they can't go off on the Storm. The second is going to be a little bit of Grave Hate, and I keep talking about how I think this could use symbolics, and that's so you can disrupt the wall bouncing. They don't necessarily run a lot as far as flashback or grave dependent cards, but the wall is used obviously a lot to return things. And the final thing is just attacking the wall in general. Now most run a very small creature base with only maybe 5 creatures, possibly 6. The one I'm facing or did face, this is retroactive, is going to be a version that is running just walls and occasionally tilling trees for the sideboard option. That's something that can be targeted down through things like Geth's Verdict because they have such a small creature base, but it's more important in what's going on currently than in the versions that do run those 6. If they start getting Mulldrifters in there, then all of a sudden the Geth's Verdict or Diabolic Edict is less powerful, and some targeted kill is important. Now there are a couple of ways to do that. Let me bring this back for a minute. This is what I have on screen is going to be what I had as far as sideboarding for game 2 and 3. Now, there's a couple of ways that we can go about killing off the walls. Obviously, you can use the verdicts and the edicts, and that's okay. But the targeted kill is going to be a little better. Snuff Out can be really great in this because of the fact that it has that ability to pay 4 life and do the ability as opposed to paying the 4 mana cost. This is going to be very important. Once they start getting things going with the fissures, you're going to be on basically 1 land from there out. And those 1 land plays are going to be more important, and that's all you need to do Snuff Out is a single swamp. In a similar way, Spinning Darkness can be played for nothing by removing the top 3 black cards from your graveyard. The one thing you have to keep in mind about Spinning Darkness is that it only does 3 damage and gain 3 life. That means that in order to kill off a wall at 4 toughness, you're going to need both of these. So if you're going to make the change, and here's what it came down to. I had obviously, let's move these in here. I had obviously brought in these 8 copies of land destruction spells. I had obviously decided to take out 2 Chittering Rats to bring us down to 61. I'm sorry, Crypt Rats. Crypt Rats is something that's great versus aggro, not so great against a deck that does not run creatures. It can be used as a finisher, obviously, but you really need a lot of land to really get anything powerful going from it. So even 2 is possibly too much. You can make an easy argument to replace those 2 for, say, I don't know, the 2 extra copies of Distress. But at this point in time, I was sitting with 61 out of 60, and I needed to remove 1 more card. As you can see, I decided to bring in a Raven's Crime over one of the Distress. Duress is really great. You find yourself, obviously, in that 1 mana spot a lot when you're playing against Fissure. Raven's Crime gives you an opportunity to repeatedly attack through 1 card, your opponent's hand. It does not get anything targeted, but that's okay. Distress, I chose to remove over Duress, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to want to remove a non-creature anyways, so Duress is not going to be that much damaging. Distress is only a little bit weaker considering the fact that it requires a 2nd mana. So that's why we are bringing in Raven's Crime. But we're sitting here in this predicament with 61 out of 60, and so it came down to what we remove. If you remove a single copy of Spinning Darkness thinking Snuff Out will serve you better, and it very well might, what's going to happen is this. You're at 60, but you now sit here with a single Spinning Darkness. This 1 Spinning Darkness cannot target down a wall on its own. It is basically a dead card. Sure, it can gain you 3 life, which may screw up an opponent, but that's kind of a fool me once thing on the Caravec's Torch. Most likely your opponent's going to be smart enough to use Torch for more than just 20 or more than finishing damage in order to really finish things off. So your odds here are keep 2 Spinning Darknesses and a single Snuff Out. You could also do double Snuff Out remove the 2 Spinning Darknesses, and then bring back a copy of Distress. I think that's a pretty decent option there as well. Personally, I kind of liked the life gain going off of Spinning Darkness and what ability it did have to screw things up. So I decided to go with this. Life gain, again, not that important, but at the same time, we're not running Tendrils. We do have a lot of options here to kill ourselves as far as damage goes. Ragers are going to do 4 damage there. Sign in Blood is going to do 8 damage off of those if I cast all of them. So getting some life gain there is really going to help out on those. If I have to cast Snuff Out, that's another 4. And that puts me in a range where you can Carevex Torch me for 10, say. Easily less than 10, and that's not really where I want to be. So I kind of liked the idea of having Spinning Darkness in there as what life gain I can get, because Tendrils is just not an option. It's too clunky coming in at 4, and obviously you see I took out the Gets Verdicts there as well. Having the targeted kill for the walls, I think, is a much stronger option here. So there you go. Hopefully that explained a couple of things, and we're going to jump into the second game. So this was the second game. We're already off to a better start. We have 3 lands in hand. 1 is a Baron Moor, so we can feel free to cycle that off. And we're going to be in a much better position. God, stuttering today. Much better position to make it through this game, especially now that we have our 8 Rancid or our 8 land destruction spells. Starts off with the Cloud Post, a pretty good start there for any post deck. We're going to end of turn cycle. Turn 2 here, did not draw into a 3rd land. This is actually a little bit concerning because we need that 3rd land to hit Rancid Earth, and if we don't get that, it's going to be a little bit troublesome. Not terribly worried because we have Sign in Blood here, but you see that does not actually hit into a land. So we were a little bit behind on land, we'll say. The first game, we had to mulligan down to 4. This game, we are still a little behind in land, and we're basically praying to the magic gods that we can top deck into a swamp so that we can use a land destruction spell here. If not, we might as well call it game over at this point in time. Thankfully, they do side with us. I do hit that swamp, and now I'm going to use Rancid Earth. I'm going to target down those Cloud Posts. They do have options for sideboarding against land destruction in the form of Tilling Tree. I'm going on the assumption that my opponent did not bring those in for this first game. I can't verify that, but we did not see him. So you do have opportunities to kill off creatures here, kill off lands here, and, hold them back for a while, but eventually those Tilling Trees, usually about 2 copies in the sideboard, will come into play. So here, going to sit down with a Spectre, trying to eat away at my opponent's hand what I could. Drawing, off the Rager is all well and good, but damage-wise is the more important thing. They're both doing 2 damage. The flying is going to get it past walls, and I was hoping that maybe the extra discard will kind of break up whatever he had going on. Especially when we kind of hopefully put him behind on lands. He does obviously get the 2nd Cloud Post off the Expedition map. We're kind of hoping to top deck into more land destruction. So we're going to swing through, do some damage, and then again play a Spectre because I want as much hand control here as possible. Usually against Storm variants, you can really hose them up if you can just force them to discard and alter their hand. Even if they have to sit back and hold lands in their hands so they can discard those, that is lands that won't be on the field in the first place. So he's still getting a lot of great plays here with his Prisms. Once you get 3 in play, you're pretty well off. He gets another Expedition map, which is basically going to counter this Rancid Earth that I just drawn. I'm obviously going to use that and take the opportunity to slow down the Cloud Post mana, obviously. And do 4 damage. He's going to be able to, like I said, use the Expedition map and get it right back into play. But at least it has kind of slowed him down a turn because he has to spend this turn rebuilding that mana base and using that Expedition map to put it into play. Draw into a 3rd Spectre here, which is great. My opponent's only at 4 cards in hand. They do have a lot of great opportunities to rebuild that hand off of things like Compulsive Research, all of the draw on the Prisms and the Stars as well. But we're going to just want to get through as much damage as possible. The flying is definitely helping, and we want to be able to force discard. So research is going to come down. Like I said, if you hit those lands, using those researches is great, and cycles the remote islands as well. And gets his 2nd Cloud Post. So now he's kind of rebuilt his mana base. If I get another land destruction or 2, then I'm in a really good position here. Options as far as plays, I can obviously draw off the Rager. I can keep attacking his hand with the Rats. Or I can use simply Distress or Sign in Blood. At 7 cards, Sign in Blood is not great. Let's open this graveyard here real quick. So Unearth and Distress in the same turn obviously isn't going to happen because I have no creatures in the graveyard. They have no way basically to kill creatures. Any creatures that end up in your graveyard here will be something like the Crypt Rats that you sacrifice yourself, or it's going to be something you discard after they fissure your hand, fissure all your cards back to your hand. I did decide, you see there, to play Chittering Rats and keep attacking his hand. So, even though you're killing off Cloud Posts, they are the big producers when it comes to mana base, but they can still build up their mana base by getting Glimmer Posts and making each of those Cloud Posts tap for more. So having multiple Cloud Posts that tap for a little bit is kind of balanced out by having, few Cloud Posts that tap for a lot. So Wall comes down, but again, these Spectres are going to be great here. I have all 3 of my Spectres in play. They're going to be able to get past that and do 6 damage through the air. Glimmer Posts are obviously going to be troublesome here because of the fact that it's gaining life. And this is where things are going to start to go downhill, because he does get the Temporal Fissure Storm going. He has lots of mana. Basically, he's got 5 Locust lands in play, and he's got his Wall on the field. So he's going to choose to return all of my lands, obviously, as well as one of my Spectres, because he knows that he can block this Chittering Rats all day. What I really need here is a kill spell for the Wall. I have sided out, my Edict effects, so I need a second Spinning Darkness or the single Snuff Out that I had in there. And a bit of a silly move there, I decided to use the Spinning Darkness to keep me from having to keep me from having to discard additional cards. I figured I would use it and gain the life. But it was silly. I did realize later that I needed to hold on to that in hopes of finding the second one so I could hopefully kill off the Wall. I'm sitting here with some pretty good options available to me. I can discard these cards, and if he fissures my creatures here, and if he fissures me again to the point where I need to only put 1 land into play, I can use Unearth to get them back and do another discard off the Spectre. So the Spectre was the first thing to go, and I figured I'd get rid of the Rager as well, just in case I wanted to draw off it or something like that. If I get to 2, I get Sign in Blood, which I can use as 2 damage on my opponent, or I will have Distress and I can make a play then. At this point in this game, the deck obviously in the early game kind of waits till turn 3 before it can really get something going, but oddly enough, in this midpoint, we have all of our plays on our curve. Rancid Earth, I don't think we're ever going to get the point. When the Fissure combo starts going, odds are good you're not going to get to that 3 mana cost again. You'll be very lucky if you do. So, getting that Rancid Earth into play on the Cloud Post would be fantastic. But its odds of me actually getting it are not great. It's something that you almost wish you had, like, sideboard of Dark Ritual, so you could, replay that swamp, play a Dark Ritual, and Rancid Earth that, and really slow him down. And here's, icing on the cake is I do draw that second Spinning Darkness, and this would have given me an opportunity here. He is tapped out, so he would be unable to play Ghostly Flicker, which is the only thing that would save this Wall, and that would be the only Wall in his deck. So I think at this point in time, had I not been stupid, had I kept onto this Darkness and got rid of, say, the Rager or something like that, even Rancid Earth, because like I said, you are going to have a very little opportunity to actually use that and get to that 3 mana cost once the combo starts. So had I decided to hold on to the Spinning Darkness, he would have been tapped out. I could have attempted to use that. Obviously here, I'm at a point you need to cast that for free. You need to have 3 black cards in your graveyard for each. But when he really gets this going with the combo on his Wall, it's going to still have that opportunity. I'm going to find myself in the situations where he's bounced all my permanents and my hand is so big that I have to discard cards. So I will easily get to that point where I have 6 in the graveyard and I can use it. Something that I should have kept in mind. A bit of an interesting discard there when I do use Unearth. He does get rid of one of his Karavix Torch. That's something that's usually run as a 2 of in this deck as the big finisher. So by getting rid of one of those, he's hoping that he can use the Wall later on to return it, or he's going to find his second, which is very likely. So he's basically keeping this combo locked down. I have him at 3. I'm just basically 1 damage away from being able to use Sign in Blood to kill him off. He's going to keep finding those Glimmer Posts, gets himself up to 9. Now he's kind of maxed out his land, the best he can do without a Tilling Tree, and he's going to continue to use this Temporal Fissure combo to bounce things off. So I'm going to be free and clear here to attack through once again. He was only able to storm off my lands and 1 Spectre. Again, getting him down to 3, I'm going to have to discard stuff here and would have had a lot of great opportunities to build up my grave. You see, I'm already sitting at 5 black cards that could have possibly been there. Obviously, I discarded a swamp, but that was 5 cards that could have possibly been there. and on the next turn I would have had 6. But anyways, made the mistake, gotta move on. Attacking through and just hoping that he does not have enough mana to Fissure Storm and combo these 3 off the board. If he leaves 1 on the field, it has to be Chittering Rats, and the wall has to be still in play. But he's pretty well off. He can tap these for 16 mana, and he does have 3 prisms, so it's really not a detriment to him that it's all colorless mana on the field. He can use these prisms and siphon that, which he is going to easily do. Uses crop rotation to find the extra mana that he needs in colors. Is going to be able to return all of this stuff. All of this stuff. Leaves the Chittering Rats. And this is where I said, you know, you had some opportunities there. But the Rats is going to only do 1 damage here. Needed an Unearth would be great. That would give me at least an option here with Spectre. When he's got his hand down to 2, he's used a few of his compulsive researches. It's going to be harder for him at this point. Only 20 cards left in his deck to rebuild that hand. And so, you know, an Unearth would be fantastic. And here, you know, easily I would have had enough to use the Spinning Darkness. I decided to eventually just get rid of it. It was kind of a waste. The wall is something he was actually returning to his hand every turn, so I couldn't even just use it to gain 3 extra life. And I had already used up the 1 and thrown it to the grave recklessly, so it's just wasting space in my hand. This is the point where he's got me locked down, and you can kind of see hopefully how this goes as far as his lockdown is concerned. Every turn I'm going to only be able to play 1. My only hope here is an Unearth to slow him down a little bit, or drawing into a Duress, and hopefully, you know, hitting something there. But he's kind of got this locked out. What he has to be concerned about now, this game is locked out, but what he's got to watch is his time. He only has 13 minutes left, and this is something if you're playing Simic you should definitely pay attention to, and only 18 cards in deck. So he really needs to get to finishing me off quick. At 21 life and only 2 Cloud Posts, he can't do enough damage in 1 single turn to finish me off. So in order to finish me off, he has to be able to use the wall to return the Caravec's Torch, if he does not find one, do a little bit of damage, and still, you know, have the wall to replay. I mean, look at what has to happen. He has to, if he doesn't have Ghostly Flicker, he has to use Temporal Fissure to return the wall, replay the wall, which is 5 mana, plus 5 is 10. So you're looking at 10 mana for just there, and then the torch is going to cost at least 1 extra. So that's 11 mana, and he's sitting on 17. So every turn he would only be able to use this combo and do... oh god, math. Oh god, I'm not gonna go there because I spaced on my math already. But he's not gonna be able to do very much mana, very much damage off of that torch, and he actually needs to use the wall to return that Temporal Fissure every single time. So he actually needs to find that other torch to really pull this off, or Ghostly Flicker. So drawing Choking Sands and all of this great stuff that I cannot play. Going to simply sit here and watch him combo off. But again, keep an eye on this game. I'm actually going to win this game at 1. I can't do anything. He's going to keep me completely locked down. But he's going to lock himself out here with his own combo. He's going to use a lot of time off his clock and eat up almost his entire deck trying to find this torch. So do find Duress. Here's what I saw in his hand. He has an option to basically play anything here. Ideally, I would love to get rid of the wall, but that's not going to happen. So my option basically comes down to Ghostly Flicker. He can't get any real benefit off of Crop Rotation and Explore at this point in time. You know, whatever lands he needed, he's already got. The prisms are going to draw him cards, and that's, you know, what I really, I guess, debated about was prism versus flicker, but I decided by getting rid of the flicker, it's going to slow down his combo a little bit more. He needs that flicker back in his hand to really kind of start abusing things even more and have any chance of using the torch in his graveyard plus the Temporal Fissures. So here we go. Again, he's going to be returning stuff and wasting a lot of time doing that, drawing a lot of cards off of the prisms and replaying prisms. And we're going to kind of go through this. And even he, during our game, admitted he realized that he should have given up on this game a lot earlier. And that's kind of, I think, a real difference between, you think about those pro-level grinders and the average Pauper player. Any player in any format, I guess. They know when to quit. They would know earlier on that this was a lost cause, perhaps, and that they were just wasting time working off this combination. I mean, I'm gonna just try and go through this as quick as possible. You'll see he keeps replaying things, keeps drawing cards. He's down to 6 cards in his deck, 7 time on his clock. Fissure. Keeps me bounced, keeps himself bounced, because he knows too, if he allows me to get to 2 mana, this could be game over. And it would, actually, because Sign in Blood. He doesn't know that for a fact, but I know that. If he allows me, if he, takes a turn off and does not lock me down, then this is game over anyways, because I get to that 2 mana spot, I do Sign in Blood, and he's pretty much done unless he has mana to flicker it, because he's been using his flicker to use prisms. So that game ended, and he just conceded out and realized that 5 minutes on clock, 6 cards in deck, he was going to probably lose this anyways, and he probably devoted too much time into this. And I said I don't think he was running, obviously, no other creatures other than a single wall, but I think he did not bring in the Tilling Trees in the sideboard for this game. I think he should have done that, expecting me to sideboard in land destruction. A little proactiveness. But we're going to go into the third game here. I didn't make any changes in the sideboard, so we're just going to jump right into the third game. Alright, so third game, I'm sitting here thinking, oh god, here we go again. Opening hand has not a single land in it. Again, not terrible because we are on the draw, so we can make up for this, but we're obviously going to have to mulligan down. Thankfully, we can stop at 6. We have 3 lands in this hand, which is pretty awesome. We have the Snuff Out, which is going to be great when we do find that wall coming into play. We do have enough lands we can cycle them more, and we have a Distress on turn 2. So not a terrible start there, even though we had to drop to 6. Draw into a land, which is not terrible. Cycle and get into Duress, which would have been, I guess, a much stronger play there. Draw into Land Destruction, which is great. We're going to kind of hold that back until we can find a Cloud Post. That's our ideal target. But we are going to have Distress here, and that's going to allow us an opportunity to get our opponent's hand. So looking at my opponent's hand here, I had a bit of a quandary. Obviously, I'm going to kind of ignore these green cards. He has no prisms or spheres to change the color to green just yet. And if he does and gets a Cloud Post, I have Rancid Earth to answer that. So I'm not afraid of these. My question here is, do I start removing his Temporal Fissures from his hand or the Compulsive Research? Now, looking at this hand alone, my thought process was, okay, I know for a fact on his next turn he can use Compulsive Research, and that could find anything that's important. That could find the Cloud Post, which I'm concerned about. That could find the Torch. That could find the wall. So I decided I would get rid of this because the Fissures he couldn't do just yet. I knew later on I had a Duress, and I could get rid of one of those Fissures at least. So I went for the Compulsive Research, hoping to at least slow him down a little bit. And it does. You see there he makes his third land play, and that's all he can do. Draw into a second Rancid Earth, which is fantastic, but I don't want to use those just yet. Obviously, again, the Glimmer Posts do increase the mana base, but if I can target down a Cloud Post, I definitely want to do that before I target down a Glimmer Post. So Duress is coming out, like I said. Had no other play here, so I am going to just reduce the count of Temporal Fissures in his hand. So opponent's turn, Star obviously going to play it into green and use Crop Rotation, targeting the island, and find himself a Cloud Post and replay the island that he had in his hand. And this is, that was, scripted. You could almost see it coming a mile away as soon as he found that, obviously. But I already have Rancid Earth in hand. I'm going to play land and destroy that as soon as possible. Now, one kind of thing I think it's worth noting, there are some times where if I'm running, Raven's Crime or whatever, or aggro, I like to keep a land or two in my hand to kind of balance out the strategy. Maybe bluff a little bit, maybe keep it to use that Raven's Crime over again. But in this situation, when you're playing Fissure, you want to drop your lands as much as possible because that is more targets that he has to Fissure. He needs a larger storm in order to remove all of your lands. So that's something you want to keep in mind. Expedition Map coming down, obviously going to get him another Cloud Post, but we do have that second Rancid Earth in hand, dropping a land once again, and going to use that Rancid Earth right away to destroy that. Gets himself finally a second color, which is good for him, bad for me. Draws on the Explorer, but has no other play. Going to use Sign in Blood here, draw into another land, again dropping all of my lands as soon as possible, and another Unearth. Now, Unearth is something that I wanted to keep at least one in hand. If we get in a situation like last game where we are in a lockdown state, what we wanted to do is be able to use Unearth to return one of those on the only mana that we had. But we have 3 Unearth in deck, and at this point in time, I think it's more beneficial. My opponent's on kind of his heels. He doesn't have any of his Cloud Posts because I've gotten rid of what he did have. So I'm going to actually cycle one of these in hopes of finding something great. More land destruction, a creature, anything to really, lock this down. And worst case, I'm sitting on 2 possible Unearths in the remainder of my deck. So draw into Spinning Darkness, which is okay here. Nothing good or bad about that. It's, again, probably going to be used just for the mnemonic wall. I'm going to play the Rager to draw into something. Chittering Rats, we're going to obviously play that, try and slow down my opponent again. You know, he's just past the turn, he made no plays, so that means that what he has in his hand is kind of unplayable. I mean, I know he has some of the little artifacts, but he doesn't want to play those just yet. He could use them to cancel out the effect from Chittering Rats, but at the very least, this is giving the possibility that he just skips his turn once again. He is going to use Crop Rotation here, get that Cloud Post, and I'm hoping to find yet another land destruction. Don't quite do it, but I'm going to be able to cycle these Barren Moors and just try and find whatever I can. Attacking through, getting damage in. Again, trying to be as aggressive as possible. Expedition Map is going to find him his second Cloud Post, and his last Cloud Post. So another Barren Moor, going to cycle it again in hopes of finding some land destruction. Get into our second Spinning Darkness, which is great. We have 6 land open and available to kill off a wall if that comes up, and plenty of black cards in our graveyard to use that ability. So attacking through. Opponent's turn. He is going to finally play his wall. He's going to use it to return the Preordain, which is, I guess, a smart move here. He's going to obviously play the map to find an island, so he can use that Preordain. That's going to help him rearrange the cards, and hopefully, I'm guessing, fix up his mana a little bit. End of turn here, I had a bit of a debate to myself. Do I use the Snuff Out right now to kill off the wall? You know, I have enough land open that I could just do it without paying the 4 life cost. Life is not a huge deal. Again, it does lower you enough to put you in range at this point in the game. But I decided I would play it safe. I would use the Spinning Darkness first so I could gain the life, and then if I needed to use Snuff Out, I could later on. So I had 6 open, and I cast the first Spinning Darkness, and I'm going to remove the top 3 in order to get the second Spinning Darkness. Now, this is the only play that Simic Post will have against this kind of thing. Most versions are not running anything like Counterspells and Condescend. So when I attempt to do this, he is going to, in response, cast Ghostly Flicker, which would prevent this. But in response to that, I am going to use the Snuff Out now, and this is how it kind of benefited me. Either way, if I started with Snuff Out and he used Ghostly Flicker, I could have gotten around it. But, you know, it puts me at a pretty good position here. It's going to kill off the wall and probably be game. He's obviously going to still be able to flicker the Glimmer Post even though the wall dies. So he's going to gain a little bit of life off that, but getting that wall off of the field is going to be very important. So draw into the second Unearth, kind of an odd draw here. No creatures to do anything with that. But my opponent is getting down. I don't know if you can see it. It's going to be a little small here, but he's under 2 minutes on his clock. I think even if he didn't time out, and just spoiler alert, he does time out in this game, I think we were in a pretty good position to win this. He has only 1 card in his hand, 2 after the Preordain draw. So he's going to try and rebuild his hand best he can off of things like Crop Rotation into Stars and Prisms and whatnot. But having such few cards in his hand, really not going to do him justice. He is going to Fissure Storm here off. He only gets a Fissure count of 3. And like I said, having as many of these lands in play as possible is a great thing. I had 8 lands in play, so this is going to not set me back that far. Keeping me at 5 lands is still pretty good for me. I only need 3 to make most of my plays, and I'm going to get to replay 1. So no cards in hand. The Spectre's not going to do anything, but I want to get creatures on the field and damage through as soon as I could. And right about now is where he does say in chat, you know, he realizes that he should have decided to give up earlier in the second game, and I think he definitely was right on that. Finally starting to rebuild his hand, Compulsive Research. I still think I was in a pretty good position here. I'm going to Chittering Rats, skip his draw. He's going to concede out, 23 seconds on his clock. But I think I was in a pretty good spot to still win this game, even if he had full time on the clock. What this is going to do, he's going to skip his next draw, and he did tell me reveal his hand, and it was a Tilling Treefolk. He currently has no green, so he could not play it. This turn he would have taken 6, gone down to 10. He would have had no play next turn, and he would have taken 8, gone down to 2. And I was in a pretty good position. Again, like I said, I would have had 7 lands on the field, and I think I could have easily gotten by anything he would have had. He wouldn't have been able to finish me off just yet in one single turn. He needed prisms and stuff like that to really start changing colors. You know, obviously, if he found one on the following turn, he could get the Treefolk into play, and start getting his mana base back, but even getting the Treefolk into play is only going to be able to block 1 creature, and this game was over. So there you go. I thought this was, you know, one of the better matchups for this particular black control deck, and I was glad I could find